How's it going, everyone? This is Dixon of the Ultimate Gamer. I'm logging on. And there's Tiffany laying down in the background on the bed. She's pretty sleepy. Well, or waiting for me, should I say. Oh, by the way, my today's topic I want to go over is this one retro console, or retro clone console, called the Polymega. What is a Polymega? Well, this thing has actually been in development for years. Well, it's been out within the last few years for, I believe, sometimes in limited quantities at the same time. This Polymega console was originally called the Retro Blocks, but they kind of changed the name to avoid confusion with the Rubik's Cube, which is also known as the Retro Blocks. Well, anyway, this Polymega console is a clone console. Well, the default unit is the base unit is actually a CD-ROM console where it can play all sorts of 90s CD-ROM console games on. Well, the system's actually an emulated console where you can actually put a CD in there and rip the game onto the hard drive or into the memory, and then go from there. Now, the type of CD-ROM games they play are the Sega CD games, Sega 32X CD games, Sega Saturn games, the PlayStation 1 games, TurboGrafx CD games, and Neo Geo CD games. And they play them in all regions, which is a real awesome thing this system can do. So far, one of the biggest drawbacks, well, I'm pretty sure they can update this in the future, hopefully they can, is add a compatibility of 3DO games and CDI games and Jaguar CD games. More importantly, hopefully they'll add both the 3DO and the CDI games. Well, so far, that's a really cool concept they have right by far. Though the price point for that unit is $550 right now. That's a little too high for a clone console. Well, probably because of all the chips and hardware they put into it and during the time and basically chip shortage and all that sort of shit. Since it's an emulated console, and some people are thinking, why play the emulation off of computer instead? You just download them to a hard drive and play them from there. Yeah, that makes sense, but at the same time, I like to have a console too, where you can hook it up to a TV and play like you're on the console. Except you're not playing multiple CD-ROM consoles, you're playing it all in one. Or almost all in one, that is, because it's not backwards compatible with all 90s consoles, at least not yet. Hopefully they will fix that part. It has an HDMI port on the back, so it only works on HD TVs or 4K TVs. Plus, they have a memory slot on the back and a Ethernet network cable on the back and 2 USB ports on the front, along with the CD drive. Of course, you can plug in external hard drives in the USB ports on the front, and I'm pretty sure you can plug in controllers too. Of course, you can plug in controllers. To speak of controllers, the default one that came with this Polymega is almost pretty identical to the PlayStation DualShock controller. And it's wireless and Bluetooth. It looks like they have a second edition of that one out now. I mean, of the controller itself. Either one looks pretty cool to me. But I'm wondering with the USB ports, you can you can use other controllers like the USB Saturn controller for like Saturn games or USB controller for PlayStation games. Or the TurboGrafx controller, which I do have with the TurboGrafx Mini that has a USB port. I can plug that in and play TurboGrafx CD games. That would be pretty cool. If you could, I'm pretty sure you could, but I haven't looked too much into that, but we'll see. I'm definitely not 100% sure about the console itself because I don't own one, and I do have thoughts about getting one. I did have thoughts about getting one for years actually, debating if I should get one later this year. But that's still on my thought list though, so I would like to have all-in-one consoles if possible, because I got a lot of CD-ROM games from the 90s to install on there from majority of all platforms. Just wish they can add 3DO games. That would kick ass. I thought that was an underrated system, by the way. And another cool thing about it, it doesn't have to be just a CD-ROM console, because they actually have add-on modules where you can play cartridge game consoles, which are individual at a time though for one of those. And not only they actually have, but the console add-ons also have their own controller ports from the original hardware, and they also have their own controllers, which they can be purchased individually too. And precisely, you can plug in old controllers from the old systems into those ports. And of course, each one of these console modules come with one controller, which, like I said, the controllers itself can be sold individually. But however, there's also the deluxe bundle, which you can actually get for $800. That's actually cheaper getting them in a bundle than getting the base unit individually, and getting each one of the 4 units individually as well. So it's cheaper to get it that way. But the only downside is it doesn't have the 5th module, because the 5th module came out recently. Anyway, the first module is the Power module, which is actually the 8-bit Nintendo Entertainment System module. Fortunately, you cannot play Famicom games since they have a different pin output in there, which is a bummer. Hopefully they get it fixed around that part. Other than that, that's really cool. You can play PAL formats games still. I mean, the rest of the console modules you can play Japanese games on, at least. Which, I'm going to move to the second module, which is the Super module set, which is the 16-bit Super Nintendo, or Super Famicom, should I say. Of course, you can play all region console games on that as well. And then the third module, which is the Mega module, which can play 16-bit Sega Genesis games or Mega Drive games. An interesting thing about this module, you can play the 32X games, which was originally an add-on for the Sega Genesis to play 32-bit games, which was practically a failure, but it still had some decent games on it, though. Still really cool. Now, the fourth module is the Turbo module set, which can play the 16-bit TurboGrafx 16 games, which is also known as the PC Engine in Europe or in the East. Now, I never owned the original hardware of the TurboGrafx 16, so I never had any of the games itself on it. I do own the TurboGrafx Mini, but that's pretty much it, though. Hopefully, the USB controllers will work to plug into the actual base unit to play the TurboGrafx CD games, if I get around to getting any. Now, the fifth module, this is, like I said, this is the recent one. And unlike the other ones, this one's $10 more than the other ones, which is $89. It's called the Ultra model set, which is the Nintendo 64 add-on. And, of course, it has all 4 inputs on the front, just like the original console. Pretty cool. And this is the only one that doesn't come with the bundle set. Of course, there's the gun controller that's in the works, which is really awesome. And, of course, there's 2 default controllers. So far, this thing is pretty impressive, and I've seen videos of it, and it may be a hit and miss to some, though, because, after all, it's an emulation console, and some people think, why would anybody buy a console for that price, and well, they can play it off the emulator on the PC? Well, there's a big reason I like to get one of these Polymegas, because they actually play pretty much all the console games that you have on the old hardware, and the old hardware pretty much dies out on you eventually. Which it did, and that's why I no longer collect old hardware anymore for like old TVs or anything, because it's kind of pointless. Especially where you can actually have proper emulation for like clone consoles, or some of the clone consoles don't have emulation in their hardware, you just play them right off the cart, or CD, whatever. But this thing looks pretty amazing. I'm still debating about getting one, and if I do decide to get one, and if I do get one, I'll definitely do a big video on it. Because I like this to be my future go-to console when it comes to retro game reviews. If I like playing off TV. As well as collecting re-release of old consoles like the Atari 2600, and which I did a video on last year. The Atari 2600 Plus, which I got last year and I did a video on. And that was really amazing. They recently released a 7800 Plus console, which I haven't got around to getting, at least not yet. But the 2600 Plus also plays the 7800 games. But it wouldn't be bad to have them in my collection, especially if they're actually made for modern TVs. Hopefully they do that with all retro consoles, and I'd probably go after them all. Anyway, back to the Polymega. So far, I do hope they make more console module add-ons like for the Atari games or the Atari Jaguar games especially. Even though that system was a flop, but at the same time it had decent games. And hopefully they'll also add cartridge inputs for the Master System games, as well as for the cards and for the cartridges, as well as the portables, Game Gear, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and Atari Lynx. Or exaggerates myself here. And not to forget to mention the Famicom, since obviously the NES module can't play Famicoms because it has a different cartridge input. Now back to the base unit. It plays majority of all the CD-Rom games from the 90s. I'm just hoping they bring the 3DO and the CDI and the Jaguar CDs, as well as the Amiga CD games, even though the consoles I mentioned were pretty much obscure, but they had some good games on it though, and I would like to have them on this thing too. Even the bad games like the Zelda CDI games, just for mockery. I like to play those ones if I can get my hands on a copy, or at least a bootleg or something, I don't know. Well anyway, that was the Polymega. If I ever get one of these, I'll do a video on it to show you how it is, starting with an unboxing. I am thinking about getting one of those. For those of you who have an opinion if I should or I shouldn't, maybe you should leave a comment below, and I would like to hear what your opinion is. But I'm not sure if it'll stop me or not, though, because I'm too much into looking at this, though. And things actually kept improving, at least, though, for the better, though. Well, I think I'm running out of words, so thank you all very much for watching and listening. This is Dixon of the Ultimate Gamer. I'm logging off.